Hey, this is section 1.3, absolute value equations, and I get this feeling we've done this in the past. Let me try to use the force here. Let me go back.
All the equations we do, I always say do $10 backwards. $10, $10, all that fancy stuff. So I'm looking at, I have an add, and then I have a multiply, it's 2 times this. Alright, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Now I have 2 times the absolute value of x minus 8 equals 12.
Well, where did that come from?
So
that came from 7.4. That was Sully. Okay, Sully's teaching how to do absolute value in Algebra 1, 7.4. Well, we're kind of reviewing that. We're going to make it a little more complicated, but it's the same thing here. Okay, if you remember the definition, Sully told us the absolute value of a number is the distance the number is from 0 on a number line. Let's look at that real quick. Okay, here's a number line. So here's 0. Here's negative 3 and positive 3. Okay, how far away is negative 3 from 0? Well, that's 3 away. You can count. 1, 2, 3. How far away is 3 from 0? That is also 3. Okay, so here's how we do absolute value. Absolute value are these 2 long stick-looking things. That's how we show. It's like parentheses that are straight. And that tells the reader, whoever's reading it, that you're taking the absolute value of everything inside. So this first example, the absolute value of negative 3 is going to equal 3. We just looked at that. How far away from 0 is negative 3? It's 3 units away. Okay, so then we're going to work it backwards. We're going to say, all right, I took the absolute value of some unknown variable, but the answer was 3. All right, well, look, we have 2 possibilities here. Either that unknown variable was negative 3, or that unknown variable was 3. Okay, so we have 2 answers for all absolute value equations. Now, I had students last year that looked at this and said, oh, it's or. That means I can give you one or the other and I'm still right. No, you have to give both. You can't just give one. There's 2 possibilities here. You need to convey that if you want your solution to be complete. Okay. The second example here, we took the absolute value of some unknown variable and it equals a negative number. So when is the distance from 0 negative? Well, you can't have a negative distance. So whenever your absolute value is negative, we just write no solution. And then down here, the absolute value can never equal a negative number, ever, no matter what. Make sure you write down this definition here. The absolute value of a number is the distance the number is from 0 on a number line. I had to read that. That kind of slowed me down a little bit. Solving an absolute value equation. All right, so down here what I'm going to do is, this is the Algebra 2 definition. If the absolute value of ax plus b equals c, then ax plus b equals c, or ax plus b equals negative c. All right, that's not going to mean a whole lot to some of you. Maybe some of you get it. Okay, but I'm going to show you what it is in real life here. Let's pretend like we have, this is a pretend equation. Okay, so the absolute value of 2x minus 1 equals, I don't know, let's say 17. Okay, I made that up. So the way this works, all right, we have the absolute value in here. We have this thing. It's in the absolute value. And I took the absolute value, and it equaled 17. Before I took the absolute value, you only have 2 possibilities for this. It's either 17 or negative 17. And that goes back to this question right here. When you take the absolute value of x and it equals 3, right, then that must have been a 3 or that must have been a negative 3. You don't have a lot of choices. Well, in this example, either the inside of the absolute value, the whole equation there, that expression, it's actually called an expression, is equal to 17 or it was equal to negative 17. So those are the 2 equations I would write. Either that was a negative 17 or whatever's on the inside there, that was a positive 17. That's how you get your 2 answers. All right, so let's go back up to this equation. You got to get comfortable looking at theorems and definitions that are generalized, and that's what this is here. If ax plus b, and you take the absolute value of ax plus b equals c, then the inside equals the positive or the inside equals the negative. That's exactly what we did down here, and hopefully you remember doing that. Here's Sully's super steps for solving absolute value. These came right out of 7.4. You can go back if you need it. Step 1, move everything outside the absolute value bars to the other side. So you have to solve for the absolute value. Okay, I kind of shortened it up here, what that means. Step 2, set whatever is inside the absolute value bars equal to the number and its opposite. And when we say the number, we mean the one that's by itself. In this example, we mean the 17. So the 17 and its opposite. Okay? You get that? So that's step 2. Basically, that means you write 2 equations. Positive, maybe I should put positive and negative on there. And step 3, you solve both equations. That's straightforward enough. And that's how you solve absolute value equations. So the most important part, you got to get the absolute value all by itself. Once you do that, you need to always check to make sure that it's still positive or 0. You can have 0, but you can't have negatives. Absolute value cannot be negative. It can be 0, as I said. All right, so let's go through our steps. First step here, solve for the absolute value. Get it all by itself. Well, in number 1, that has been done for us. Okay, so we go on to step 2. Step 2 says you write 2 equations, a positive and a negative. So the absolute value in here was either positive 77/12 or it was negative 77/12. So we're going to write that down. We're going to write 11 over 4r was equal to, and look, we don't have absolute values anymore because when we split it up into 2, then we get rid of our absolute values. Sorry to stop in the middle of that there, but I always see students carry the absolute values down forever. Okay, so here we have 11 fourths r equals negative 77/12, or 11 fourths r equals positive 77/12. All right, well now we just got to solve each one of those equations. We have our answer. Now, my recommendation, because we have a fraction in front of the variable, let's use a reciprocal because that makes it nice and easy. 4 over 11, they cancel, but you got to do both sides of the equation. And look, this is, you don't need your calculator. This is so simple. Look, we have 4 and a 12. That reduces to 1 over 3. We have 77 and 11. That reduces to a 1 and a 7. So r here is going to equal negative, don't forget that negative, 7 times 1 over 3 times 1, which is negative 7/3. That's our one answer. Or, and we're going to do the same thing over here. 4/11ths, 4/11ths, everything cancels. We're happy there. R equals, we get a 3 on the bottom, a 7 on the top, so we get 7/3. So the last thing you need to do, you make it really clear what your answer is. See how that 3 snuck in there? I am so upset at that 3 right now. What are you doing? Get up there. So the first one, the answer is r equals negative 7 over 3 or r equals positive 7 over 3. If you want to, if you're feeling tricky and frisky, you can put it all in one. R equals plus or minus 7/3. That's okay too, because it's plus or minus, so the or's in there and we're good with that. All right? That was number 1. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 says we have 1/3 times the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 6. Now, the first step, you have to, the way Sully said it, move everything outside the absolute value bars to the other side. Okay, so what is outside the absolute value bars? That 1/3. We got to get rid of that. Okay, you have to get the absolute value all by itself. And so that means we have to get rid of the 1/3. So the way I'm going to do that, again, we're using our fractions. You ever wonder why your teachers in the past said your fractions are so good for you to learn? Well, this is why. We're going to put that over 1. On the left, we get 3 over 1. Everything cancels. We're going to be left with the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to, we get 6 times 3, which is 18. All right? Now, at this point, we have, notice how I fixed that so it's clear. We have the absolute value of x plus 2 equal to 18. So, we took the absolute value of this stuff, and it equals 18. That means that this stuff, which is x plus 2, that either equaled negative 18 or x plus 2 equaled positive 18. By the way, I did this in my head, but I didn't mention it. When you solve the absolute value for itself, you have to check this guy right here to make sure that it's positive or 0. But it cannot be negative. And here we have 18, so we're good to go. So I checked it, but I didn't really say it. You got to make sure you check that number. Okay? Let's move on. We have our 2 equations here, so we drop the absolute value signs, and we're going to get x equals minus 2 minus 2. That'll give us a negative 20. Or x minus 2 minus 2 equals 16. All right, we're in Algebra 2 now, so I'm not going to show every little tiny step. You should be good to go. But those are our 2 answers there. Now notice, please notice, they are not the same number. You have a 20, a negative 20, and a 16. So your answers are not always plus or minus the same thing. Yeah, a lot of students get confused with that too. Let's clean this up a little. All right, there we go. And we're going to go to number 3. Okay, we add 9 to each side first. We have to get the absolute value by itself. And right now there's a minus 9 with it. So we're getting rid of that. absolute value of 2x equals negative 13 plus 9 is negative 4. Guess what? Done. Oh, we don't write done though. We write no solution. Why do we write no solution? Because the absolute value is equal to a negative. That never happens. You never take the absolute value of something and have it turn out negative. All right, so 3 is easy. Those are nice. So always look for those. Make your life a little easier. Number 4, the absolute value is solved for and it's positive, so we can continue. So 5 minus 2x equals negative 15. 5 minus 2x equals positive 15. Let's not forget our or, because it's one or the other. So we just have to solve each one. I'm going to subtract 5 from each side. Negative 2x equals negative 20. If I divide by negative 2, x will equal positive 10 there. Okay, how about on the right? I subtract 5 from each side. I get negative 2x equals positive 10. All right, so then we divide each side by negative 2, and we're going to get x equals negative 5. So our answer for this one, number 4, is x equals 10 or x equals negative 5. Easy enough. Let's go on. Number 5 here. What do we have? We have 3b plus 5. That's an absolute value. Then you subtract 3 and you get 4. So let's get everything on the outside. Let's move that, as Sully said. So we're going to add 3 to each side. They cancel. So we're going to get the absolute value of 3b plus 5. That's going to equal 7. Now you write your two equations. I mean, I'm checking 7. Check 7. It's positive. Good to go. So I can write my two equations. Either 3b plus 5 equal negative 7, or 3b plus 5 equal positive 7. So we solve each one of those equations. Here we go. Minus 5 minus 5. That'll give us 3b equals negative 12. And then divide by 3, divide by 3. b equals negative 4. Or subtract 5 from each side. We're going to get 3b equals 2. And then b will equal 2 over 3 when you divide each side by 3. I mean, it's really that simple, people. We're not trying to burn your brain out here. Let's try 6. What do we have? Get rid of that. It's 6 times. Okay, we're going to use GEMDAS. As Sully said, we're going to get rid of that 6. Okay, I always used to tell my students, and then they got confused, so I quit doing it. But it's like 6 times x. 6 times this thing equals 30. What do you have to do to solve that equation? Well, you divide by 6. All right, well, that's what we're doing right here, right now. We're going to divide by 6, both sides, and they would cancel. And everybody's happy. So we get 5 plus 5r is going to equal 5. There's a lot of 5s there. So, can't forget my absolute value signs. Awesome. The 5 is positive, so I can continue. So I get 5 plus 5r equals negative 5, because I'm writing my two equations here, or 5 plus 5r equals positive 5. So let's solve each one. Here we're going to get 5r equals, we subtract 5, we get negative 10. R is going to equal negative 2. Everybody good with that? How about on the right? Subtract 5, you get 5r is equal to 0, or r equals 0. So the answer for number 6, as we're going through it, r equals negative 2, or r equals 0. Tell you what, I'm only going to do one more, and then you can do 2 by yourself. Or 3. Or however many are left there. 4, I think. Holy moly. Let's subtract 1 from each side. We have to get the absolute value by itself. So they cancel. So the absolute value of negative 8 plus 2a has to be equal to negative 22. Done. That's a negative. Did you see it? I saw it. So I'm done. No solution. You know, if you work through all that stuff, tough. That's your bad. Here's what I want you to do. Pause the video. You have 4 to do. I will come back and help you out, and I'll go over those 4, and then we have a word problem, and we're done. Go. Okay, so hopefully you did okay. First one's pretty straightforward. The absolute value is solved for, so you just set it up to negative and positive. You go through, you solve it. Your answer is negative 6 or negative 2. That's easy enough. By the way, if we checked any of these, can we plug that negative 6 in? We plug in negative 6 in, what do we get? Plug that negative 6 in, we get negative 2. Take the absolute value, you get positive 2. Let's plug a negative 2 in. Negative 2 plus 4 is positive 2. Take the absolute value, you get positive 2. So this is working for us. Awesome. That's how you check your answers on a mastery check. Make sure you plug them in and check them so you know you're right. Number 9. What do we have? This is of the form 5 plus 3. and then I want to say x to help you out, but 5 plus 3x equals 2. What would you do first? You get rid of the 5. So this one's a little tricky. You got to get rid of that 5 first. And once you do that, you get 3 times the absolute value, negative 5v minus 1 equals negative 3. Uh-oh. We're not done yet, though. You got to solve for the absolute value. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Guess what? It's still negative. So we're right. No solution for that one. Why'd that go away? What's up with that? All right, let's look at 9. And by 9, I mean 10, of course. Here we go, number 10. I'm going to work this one out in front of you so you can see it. So we have to add 4 first. Plus 4. Notice how that's negative? You don't stop the problem right now. You keep going, solve for the absolute value, see what happens. So we add 4 to each side. They cancel. We get negative 5 times the absolute value of 3x minus 1. That's going to equal negative 40. Okay, so now I divide by negative 5 because that negative 5 is in front. Negative 5, negative 5. They cancel out. The absolute value of 3x minus 1 is going to equal positive 8. So we're good. We can keep going with this. We don't no solution it. Okay, so let's keep going. 3x minus 1 is going to equal negative 8, or 3x minus 1 equals positive 8. So we add 1 to each side. What's that going to give us? Ugly decimals coming up. So we get negative 8 plus 1, negative 7. We divide by 3. By the way, on your homework, you have to write all of your answers as fractions. Do you know how to do that in a calculator? I'll show you in a minute. Okay, we add 1 to each side. We're going to get 3x equals 9. This one's x equals 3. So I'm going to write final answer, x equals negative 7/3, or x equals 3. Let's do 11, then I'll help you out with the calculator. This one's tough, but the absolute value is by itself and it equals a negative number, so we just write no solution. Whew, that was crazy. Let's go to the calculator real quick. Okay, so we're working through a problem here. We get 52 divided by, I don't know, maybe like 12, and our answer ends up being really ugly like this. All right, so on your homework, it's asking you to write all of your answers. If they're not integers, you have to write them as fractions. So the way you do that in your calculator, you just hit the math button. The first choice there is turn it into a fraction. Then you hit enter, and it's an improper fraction. That's perfect. We'll just leave it like that. Okay, so that was a hypothetical problem. If you don't know how to reduce or you need help with your calculator, that's how you do it. All your answers should be fractions. Okay, so here's Michael Jordan averaging 37 points per game in 87. True story. Suppose in one game he was 12 points from the average, but we don't know if it was above or below. What possible point totals could Jordan have scored? All right, so that's the question. So I'm going to underline that question there. What possible point totals could Jordan have scored? We're going to call that X. It's usually X. Is when they're asking a question, that's usually X. Okay, and he was 12 points from the average, and he averaged 37 points per game. Okay, so in absolute value equations, remember that the absolute value measures the distance a number is from 0. All right, so this is the same idea. We're going to take Jordan's score, which is 37, and the difference between Jordan's score and whatever he scored, that difference is going to equal 12. Okay, so the difference, whatever the difference is, the plus or minus, that goes right here at the end of the equation. And that's true for every absolute value equation. Now you just have to solve this equation. So, what do we get here? 37 minus x equals positive 12, or 37 minus x equals negative 12. So you subtract 37 minus 37. What do we get? 12 minus 37, that's going to be negative 25. That's what negative x is, so x equals 25. On the other side, when you solve it, subtract 37. We're going to get negative x to equal, what do we get here? Negative 49. And then x will equal 49. So our answers are 25 or 49. That's how that works. You know what's smarter, though, than setting it up in 36 minus x? You could also set it up as the absolute value of x minus 37. Because the difference from 37 and his score is the same as the difference between his score and 37. So if you do it that way, you don't have to do that last. It doesn't work out negative. But that's it. Hey, that was a lot of review, and I did a lot of problems for those of you that are having trouble with these equations, so I can model them for you. But that's all you got to do. One more section after this. It's Mr. Kelly Baumholder. Remember, it's nice to be important, more important to be nice. So